16-year-old twins Emma and Sophie had always believed that family meant protection, love, and trust. But when they were sent to live with their grandfather after their parents' passing, their world took a dark and terrifying turn. At first, it was small things, strict rules, harsh punishments. But soon, the fear in their eyes became impossible to hide. They were trapped in a house that no longer felt like home, carrying a secret too painful to speak. Then came the shocking discovery: one of them was pregnant. With no one to turn to and nowhere to run, desperation took hold. What followed was a series of events that no one saw coming, a choice that would lead to an irreversible tragedy. The town was left in shock, the truth buried beneath layers of fear and silence. But when the truth finally surfaced, it wasn't just a crime. It was a chilling cry for help. Emma and Sophie had always been close, sharing everything from childhood secrets to whispered dreams of escaping their small town one day. But now they shared something much darker: fear. Their grandfather, once seen as a grieving old man who had taken them in, had become a figure of control, his presence filling the house with an unbearable weight. Neighbors noticed how the girls barely spoke anymore, how their once bright eyes carried a shadow too heavy for their age. When Sophie discovered she was pregnant, the reality of their situation became impossible to ignore. She was just a teenager, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Emma, always the protector, grew desperate, searching for a solution, a way to break free before it was too late. But every door seemed locked, every whispered plea unheard. Until one fateful night, when a desperate act shattered everything, leading to a crime that would shake the entire town. As the days went by, Emma's anxiety grew, gnawing at her from the inside. She watched her sister's belly grow, the evidence of their nightmare impossible to hide any longer. The twins had never talked openly about what was happening in their home. Emma had always tried to protect Sophie, to keep things as normal as possible. But now, Sophie was a different person. She was distant, quieter than before, lost in a world of her own. Their grandfather's behavior had become even more erratic. He would often mumble to himself when he thought no one was around, and his temper flared at the slightest provocation. Emma knew something was horribly wrong, but she couldn't figure out how to fix it. They had no family, no friends to turn to, just each other. The small town was full of whispers, but no one dared to question the old man. The tension in their house reached a breaking point when Sophie, too afraid to speak, finally broke down in front of Emma. She said she couldn't take it anymore, that the thought of what was happening to her was suffocating. Emma promised her they would escape, but with every passing day, it felt more impossible. Each time they tried to plan, their grandfather seemed to sense it, his eyes narrowing as if he knew their every move. He had them cornered, and there was no way out. Or so they thought. But late one night, Sophie's fear and desperation led to a decision neither of them would have ever imagined. A single, impulsive act would set everything in motion, forcing the twins to confront the truth in a way they never thought possible. Now, the house they once called home was a prison, and escape, no matter the cost, seemed like their only chance. But at what price? The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last, as the twins' fear and frustration grew. Emma could feel the weight of her promise to Sophie. She had to find a way out. But every plan they made, every idea they came up with, seemed doomed from the start. Their grandfather was always watching, his presence oppressive and suffocating. The house that had once felt like a place of warmth now felt like a tomb, each room echoing with unspoken threats. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that their every move was being anticipated, that their grandfather somehow knew their every thought. Sophie, on the other hand, was falling apart. She had stopped eating, stopped speaking to anyone but Emma. The pregnancy weighed heavily on her, physically, emotionally. and the fear that their situation would never change consumed her. One night, Sophie finally broke. She confessed that she couldn't live like this anymore. Her voice cracked with desperation, the words tumbling out in a rush. She felt trapped, cornered, and couldn't see a way out. That was when Emma knew. Sophie's breaking point had come. She could no longer protect her, could no longer shield her from the nightmare they were living. The twins couldn't keep waiting for something to change. The stakes had reached a point where they had no choice but to act. With the tension mounting, Emma could feel something was coming. The air in the house felt charged, as if the walls themselves were closing in. The twins had reached the edge of a cliff, and only one thing was certain. Whatever happened next would change everything. But Emma couldn't help but wonder, was it already too late to escape the nightmare that had taken hold of their lives? Would they even survive what was about to happen? As the tension grew unbearable, Emma's thoughts raced. She had to act before it was too late. But just when she thought they couldn't be cornered any further, the unthinkable happened. One evening, after weeks of careful planning and avoiding suspicion, Emma found something in her grandfather's room that shattered her understanding of their entire situation. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a box filled with disturbing photographs and letters that no child should ever see. The images were old, but the faces were familiar. Emma's heart stopped as she recognized one of the figures in the photos, her mother. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Her grandfather's behavior wasn't just erratic or abusive. There was a twisted history of manipulation and control stretching back years, far beyond their time in his home. She could now see the pattern. Her mother had been a victim of this same nightmare. The girls had been pawns in a much darker game. The weight of this discovery forced Emma to rethink everything she thought she knew about their family. Was their grandfather's behavior truly a result of grief, or was something much more sinister at play? The truth was even more horrifying than she could have imagined. And now Emma had no idea who, or what, she was truly dealing with. Sophie had always been the emotional one, but now Emma found herself questioning everything, trusting no one, not even her own memories. In the midst of all this confusion, their grandfather suddenly grew more aggressive. His temper flared in an instant, and Emma noticed he was becoming more paranoid, watching them with a calculating eye. It was clear he knew something was about to happen, but he wasn't going to let it unfold without a fight. The clock was ticking, and with every passing moment, Emma felt the walls closing in tighter. Would they make it out alive? Would anyone believe their story? And most terrifying of all, what had her mother known about their The shock was overwhelming. Their mother's face was pale, but there was no mistaking the strength in her eyes. "It's time to end this," she said, walking past her father with a determined step. Emma and Sophie stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. As the truth unraveled, it became clear. The twins' mother had escaped long ago, leaving behind a trail of secrets to protect them. Their grandfather's twisted manipulation had extended far beyond their knowledge. And now the story was coming full circle, one that no one had been ready to tell. But just when they thought the nightmare had ended, a chilling voice echoed from behind them. "You can't undo what's been done." Their grandfather's voice was low, and in that moment, the air turned cold with the weight of everything that had been buried. As the tension in the room thickened, Emma, Sophie, and their mother stood united, confronting the man who had terrorized their lives for so long. Their grandfather's grip on their family was broken. He tried to speak, but the words seemed meaningless now. The truth had come to light, and nothing could reverse the years of manipulation and fear. The authorities arrived shortly after, alerted by their mother's hidden phone call. The twins were safe at last, though the scars of what had happened would never fade. Their grandfather was arrested, his twisted legacy brought to an end. For Emma and Sophie, healing would take time, but the weight of the secret was finally lifted. They had their mother back, someone they thought lost forever, and together they began to rebuild their shattered world. What started as a nightmare had turned into a story of survival, a painful but powerful reminder that the truth will always come to light.